Good morning, dear church. It is fantastic to be able to talk to you this morning. I wish I could have been there in person and could have seen your faces and could have just interacted with you. I preached this morning at a church close by. They asked me to come and preach like sort of in a last minute deal, and I've already prepared this lesson for you. And this morning I decided I'm going to do the lesson that I'm going to share with you now. I decided to do with them, and it was just so exciting to chat with them about this topic that I'm going to talk about today, because they responded so well to what I had to say. I did say last time when we made a video for you, giving you a sort of an indication as to what we are doing, and just to say thank you for all your blessings and support, that I would send you some videos of the kids. And so I've decided to do that today, and I hope that you're going to enjoy some of these videos just to break the ice for this sermon.
Go. Hello. Say hello everybody in America.
Found little monkey jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head. Mama called the doctor and the doctor said, "No more monkey jumping on the bed."
Go, Aaron, go.
Wow, that's the tambourine in the box. What's in the tambourine?
Go, Neo.
What's in the tambourine? Mom, can I see the photo? Mom, can I see the photo?
No, go again. I'm making a video.
Yeah, take a dive, Neo.
One more marker. Come on. Let's go. Can you mark it behind me? I'm going to make it down. Quickly, Tyler. Marker, Neil was here first. Okay. Baba.
What are you doing?
This.
Tell him.
Alright, I just love these kids, and I cannot wait for you to spend some time with them, to actually meet them, because they're quite cool. I'm not, all kids are cool, but I really like my kids. I think every parent feels like that. Anyways, today we're going to talk about birthdays, and I want to start off by asking you a question. How would you feel if someone you have never met remembered your birthday every year? I want you to just imagine that for a moment. How would you feel if people remembered your birthday and they don't even know you? Would you feel honored or not? Have you ever had a situation like that? Have you ever said to somebody, "Hey man, happy birthday"? You didn't even know the person. I don't know how you would come to know that. Many people say, "Well, I can see on Facebook it's their birthday, so I say happy birthday to people that I don't even talk to on Facebook." But in a world where that doesn't exist, it's probably highly unlikely. So I'm going to talk about a birthday, specifically the birth of Jesus Christ. And to whet our appetite just a little bit, what is some of the things that you remember about the birthday of Jesus? I'm sure something pops up into your mind. Maybe a name, Bethlehem. Maybe the word star. maybe the idea of the angels singing, or of Jesus being in the crib or the manger or the inn. Maybe you are thinking about Joseph's wife who fell pregnant, yet she was a virgin, and you couldn't understand that. But one thing that stands out for me that I'm going to briefly talk about today is that of the 3 wise men. Well, I want to ask a question. What if the 3 wise men were women, just to break the ice a little bit? What if they were women? They would have asked for directions, which seems to be the case the men didn't do, and I never want to do. They would have arrived on time. They would have actually been there for the birth. They would have helped deliver the baby, right? They would have cleaned the stable. They would have made a casserole, and they would have brought practical gifts, and there would have been peace on earth. But what would they have said when they left? That's another question, right? Did you see the sandals Mary was wearing with that gown? That baby doesn't look like anything like Joseph, which was probably the case, right? Can you believe that they let all those disgusting animals in the house? I heard that Joseph isn't even working right now. And that donkey that they are riding has seen better days too. Want to bet on how long it will take until you get your casserole dish back? Anyways, that's just for some fun. I'm going to read to you something. Not going to tell you where it is. And I'd like to ask you to guess where you think I'm reading this. Surely the day is coming. It will burn like a furnace. And the arrogant and every evildoer will be stubble. And that day that is coming will set them on fire, says the Lord Almighty. Not a root or a branch will be left to them. But for you who revere my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings, and you will go out and leap like calves released from the stall. Then you will trample down the wicked. There will be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day when I do these things, says the Lord Almighty. Remember the law of my servant Moses, the decrees and laws I gave him at Horeb for all Israel. See, I will send you the prophet Elijah before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, or else I will come and strike the land with a curse. Like to guess where that is written? Those are the last 6 verses of the Old Testament. Malachi chapter 4 verse 1 to 6. Malachi is giving us a prophecy that Elijah would come. He would turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. He says the Jewish people will be released. They will be saved as calves that have been released from the stall. I spoke to a lady once and she told me that in the Netherlands they actually breed cattle in multi-story buildings. And I've seen some of the videos when these cattle are released from those buildings, released from those places where they sleep and feed for a long period of time into a green pasture. They jump up and down. They're extremely excited. This text is saying that there's going to come a time when the Jewish people, when they will be released from the captivity of ancient civilizations like the Romans and the Greeks, etc. Now I can imagine how many times the earnest servants of God read this text over and over again and thought through it. These were probably meditated over and over again during the 400 years of silence. Now for the first 100 years, the Jews were okay under the guidance of Persia. I mean, Cyrus had allowed Ezra and Nehemiah to go back to Jerusalem, to go and rebuild the places that was holy to the Jewish people. They could practice their religion in peace under the Persians. With the rise of Alexander the Great, Greek culture and language infiltrated the biblical lands. The Jews could still worship Yahweh in peace, but after his death, after the death of Alexander the Great, Israel was ruled by a series of kings, of whom the worst was Antiochus Epiphanes. And that was around 167 BC when he overthrew the rightful line of the priesthood and desecrated the temple, defiling it with animals and with unclean animals and a pagan altar. Now that act of this king was the religious equivalent of rape. Eventually Jewish resistance came to the scene. A man by the name of Judas Maccabeus and the Hasmoneans, they opposed Antiochus and they restored the rightful priests and they rescued the temple. That period of the Maccabean revolt was one of war and violence and infighting. And around 63 BC, Pompey from Rome conquered Israel, putting all of Judea under the control of the Caesars, which eventually led to the rulership of the Herods. And we know exactly how the Jews felt under the rulership of the Herods. These are the last words that God spoke that I read in Malachi chapter 4. And I think they mold over and over again in the minds of the Jews during this 400-year period of time. In a sense, it's a prophecy of the Messiah. When Elijah comes, we're talking about John the Baptist. We're talking then about Jesus. And these Jews, under the persecution, under the discomfort, under the being held like cattle in a stall of Israel, they were looking forward to being released from the prison of the Romans, from the prison of the Greeks previously, and from the prison of the Persians. Even though they could worship their God, there wasn't this freedom. They were looking forward to the Messiah, and they were asking for 400 years, when will the Messiah come? When will we be vindicated from these pagan kingdoms and be released from this oppression? When will the spirit of Elijah rise and save us? The generations of the 400 silent years were looking forward in anticipation of the birth of Jesus Christ. The birth of Jesus Christ is the worldwide topic this month, right? It's Christmas. We have not been told to remember the birth of Jesus Christ by the Bible. Nowhere have we been told to celebrate the birth of Christ the way that the world does. We could argue that we have not been authorized to celebrate his birth. We can all agree that he was not born on the 25th of December, right? We can all be sure that Santa Claus and Christmas trees and elaborate gifts and balls hanging from trees have nothing to do with Jesus. But I'd like to say that the event of the birth of Jesus is powerful and contains valuable spiritual resources that we cannot afford to ignore. And I want to share with you just two today, just two, about the birth of Jesus. And I'm going to say outright from the beginning what the first one is. Wise people seek Jesus. Wise people seek Jesus. When we read the account of the birth of Jesus, it seems like the people who were most excited about the birth of Jesus were the wise men, the Magi or the Magi, whatever you want to call them. I think they were the most excited to actually meet Jesus. Tradition says that there were 3 men because they brought 3 types of gifts. Later on, they were considered to be kings, and even their names have been suggested to be Balthazar, king of Arabia, Melchior, king of Persia, and Gaspar, king of India. Now, I don't think this is really the case. I don't think they were these 3 kings. You see, a magus is a priest in Zoroastrianism. That is a type of religion that is even still existent today. There are about 110,000 worshippers of this religion. And the word Magi, it's a plural term. These men were worshippers of a Persian god by the name of Ahura Mazda. Now, Magi is where we get the word magic from. In other words, these guys, they were magicians and they were astrologers. They were magicians and astrologers. And I don't know if it's a big deal by you guys, but here by us, your star sign is very important to many people. Okay? So it's very closely associated with many things that are happening today. That there are signs in the stars, right? So these guys, they spiritually incorporated the stars and they were good at their job. They came all the way from the east. They came from modern day Iran. Now, Why were they so happy? The question is, why were they so serious about finding Jesus? It probably took them about 4 months to get there, to travel 1,500 kilometers. I think that's about 900 miles by foot. Their calculations, their worship of the false god, their observation of the stars led them from deep in pagan territory to come and bow down to a king who became a baby. This was the greatest astrological experience of their lives, and that is what they lived for. What's the point? God called the wisest men from the heart of the pagan world to come worship the Son of God. God draws excitedly respected men from Zoroastrianism, from the heart of Iran to Jerusalem to worship the King of the Jews. And if you look at that in the light of contemporary politics, this is insane. Iran and Israel, they don't sit around the same fire. They hate each other. These guys brought 3 gifts. They brought gold, and those were presented to kings. They brought frankincense, presented to gods. They brought myrrh, which was used to embalm the dead. The pagans confirmed with these gifts, without knowing it, that Jesus was indeed a king, because they gave him gold that belongs to kings. He was God indeed, because they gave him frankincense. And he came to sacrifice himself on the cross for the human race, and that's why they gave him myrrh. They were symbolically saying that he will live forever. Even though he will die, he will live forever. It's beautiful to see this as Gentiles submit to Jesus. And by the way, God does the same thing today. He gets the whole world inspired, right, to remember the birth of his son, whether they believe in him or not. Isn't that interesting? He gets the whole world to celebrate the birth of his son, whether they know it or not. People are literally celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, and they might be pagans. These guys were pagans, and they were celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. More than 5 billion people this past week, more than 5 billion people actually had a celebration, had a party. We call it Christmas. There was Santa Claus and gifts, there were all kinds of things. Jesus probably didn't even feature, but if it wasn't for the birth of Jesus, they wouldn't have had that party. Whether there's paganism in the Christian ordeal or not, millions of people sing the songs Joy to the World and Away in a Manger, whether they live for Jesus or not, whether they know it or not. They praise him on his birthday. Somehow, God has allowed millions of homes to light up with Christmas lights, signaling that his son is the light of the world. Millions of evergreen trees have been set up, which is linked to the life the sun gives. So we can really sit and criticize all the non-biblical ideas of Christmas, or we can sit back and watch people celebrate the birthday of someone they don't even know. I think it's phenomenal. You are quite special if people celebrate your birthday and don't even have a relationship with you. They rock up to your birthday party, but they don't even know you, but they come. They say, hey, great. They come. But you do. You know who he is. That's why you are at church today. That brings me back to the point I wanted to make. Wise men still seek Jesus. Jesus said in John chapter 18 verse 37, everyone on the side of truth listens to me. And it's interesting for me when I look at what's happening in the politics in the States and the different debates about the LGBTQ community and about homosexuality and about killing babies and all of those types of things. You know what? Everybody on the side of truth listens to Jesus. It seems like the people who follow Jesus and who opposes the immoral acts that are seemingly being promoted by the governments across the world, they are the people that are the fools. And we've got to be careful, because people will look at us as if we are fools when we stand up for what Jesus stands up for. But we've got to remember that the truth is on his side. And wise men try to be on his side. Paul told the Corinthians that Jesus on the cross is foolishness to the world. We should expect that. But never forget Psalm 14 verse 1. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. It's the fool that stands on the other side that seems to be wise. Sometimes people will look at us and think we are the fools for standing up for Jesus. And with that said, I want to say, never deny him. Never stop seeking him. Paul never would. He says in Philippians chapter 3 verse 10, I want to know Christ and the power of his rising, share in his suffering, conform in his death. Wise men make it their first goal to find Jesus. They don't make it their first goal to buy a new truck. They don't make it their first goal to have more money or to have the next house or to have perfection or success or the next business or self-esteem or popularity. Wise men put Jesus first and they desire Jesus most. The Magi had reasons to celebrate the birth of Jesus because of the great astrological feat that they were participating in. But more than 600 years before Jesus was born, Isaiah the prophet already celebrated the birth of Jesus. He wrote down in Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6, for to us a child is born, to us is a son given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Jesus Christ meets every need we have. Therefore his birthday is special, and when he entered human existence, our deliverance started. Because it was the birth of a counselor. In other words, we're not alone. The birth of our warrior, we are not weak. He's our warrior. The birth of our father, we are not orphaned. And the birth of our peace, we don't have to be at war. So the first thing I would like us to take home about the birth of Jesus is this. Wise men seek Jesus. That includes the ladies. Wise people seek Jesus. The second point I'd like to make is this. God's timing is perfect. One of the big arguments that Christopher Hitchens, famous atheist, I think he died in 2011, one of the big arguments that he has held or leveled against Christianity is the idea that the human race is about 100,000 years old. Scientists date it back at least that the humans have been on the earth for about 100,000 years. He says, well, let's say that's the case. He's really, he can't understand that there exists a God who would stand with indifference and look at how the human race grows and dies and is wiped out by different plagues and different weather formations and not do anything about it. And then after 100,000 years of human existence, then suddenly he says, okay, now I'm going to do something about the human race, and he lets his son be born into the world. Why didn't he let his son come 100,000 years ago? What about all those people that have died? How does God view them? He doesn't care about them? Or what's the story? For me, that is an interesting question. Dr. William Lane Craig gave him an answer one day that he couldn't say anything against. He responded in such a powerful way. According to population statistics, there has only been about 105 billion people that have ever lived on the planet. Just think about that, 105 billion people, and only 2% of them were born before Jesus. In other words, 98% of all people that have ever lived were born after Jesus. Jesus showed up just before the exponential explosion in the world's population. Think about it. Just at the time that Jesus was born, population statistics revealed to us that at the time that Jesus was born was the time that the population expanded and multiplied the most. The Jews were prepared. The Roman peace dominated the Roman world. It was an age of literacy and learning. The stage was set. And Galatians 4 verse 4 says, when the time had fully come, God sent his son into the world. Let me expand a little bit on that. Let's talk a little bit about this 400 silent years and talk about what happened during that period when these Israelites were probably sitting there and wondering, when is God actually going to come? The Romans themselves were part of the answer. For the first time in history, the Mediterranean world, the cradle of civilization, was unified at the time that Jesus came. Before that, Alexander the Great, a Greek, had first to bridge so many nations, but the Romans had built a foundation that would last longer. They had constructed the famous roads. You know that Rome constructed about 400,000 kilometers of roads. That's where we get the saying from, all roads lead to Rome. You've heard that before. It's because they did such a phenomenal job to connect different parts of the world with Rome, right? So during the Roman era, they built roads that would connect the whole world. And the birth of the Roman Empire created a sense of peace. During this time as well, there were loads of new types of ships, and so the Mediterranean Sea could have been navigated. There was what they call the Pax Romana, which was a time from 27 BC to AD 180. Just go think about this time. 27 BC to AD 180 was the most peaceful time ever during the history of the world. There were no wars between different nations. And isn't it interesting that Jesus was born exactly in that time? It was a calm environment. Throughout Egypt, Asia Minor, Middle East, Egypt and North Africa, in order for the gospel to slowly, powerfully move throughout the world. But not only that, during this period of time, this 400-year period of time, the Greeks, when they were ruling the world, they left behind Greek culture, and they left behind Greek language. Hellenistic Greek happened to be one of the most beautiful and articulate tongues the world has ever known. It seemed custom built for the ideas that distinguished Christian life and thought. I find it absolutely phenomenal that during this 400-year period of time, roads were being built so that the gospel could spread. Peace was being created so that the message and the Christian movement wouldn't be blocked by wars between other nations, and that a Greek language was established in the whole known world that is one of the most eloquent languages and most descriptive languages to describe the heart and the mind of Jesus and what he did on the cross. And on top of that, there was a spiritual hunger. Okay? The Roman gods were ineffective, and the people started to realize that. Man, these Roman gods, they didn't do anything for us. The Jews felt claustrophobic with the Roman rule, and they kept on looking for the promised Messiah to deliver them. And they had 400 years of looking for that. Okay, so the hearts of the Jews were right. The hearts of the Romans were right. The Gentiles were ready. Those 400 years of silence was annoying. Okay, but God was preparing the world for the birth and mission of his son. God was busy using the Romans to build roads so the early disciples could travel and spread the message. That's what we read in the book of Acts. God was busy in politics, laying the stage for the great Roman peace, which was necessary for the settlement of the Christian faith. He was busy teaching the whole known world the Greek language that would be most fit to carry the message of the cross. He was busy creating a hunger in the hearts of his people, preparing them for the birth of his son. So Jesus, ladies and gentlemen, he came at exactly the perfect time, just before global population expanded. Okay? Just as the world was at the biggest moment of peace the world has ever seen. Just as the Greek language was settled in that region of the world so that the gospel could be written down in that language and forever be the language that would be descriptive of the heart of God. It's all planned perfectly by Jesus. Well, by God, the Father. Ladies and gentlemen, God is always on time. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says God has made everything beautiful in its time. Everything is gorgeous and perfect in God's time. Not your time, not my time. God is not early. God is not late. God is always on time. So let me repeat this in conclusion. You have something to learn about Jesus. Alright? Because wise men seek him. Never think that you know him enough. Not even Paul was that arrogant. Always anticipate finding more of him. If you anticipate that you're going to find Jesus more, you will always be excited and you are wise. Always be ready to learn more from him. And you do that through the word. If you don't spend time in the word, I'm going to be very honest with you. And I guarantee you there's some of you that don't spend time in the word. You are not wise. And I say that with love and respect. Wise people seek Jesus. Spend time in the word. But you also find Jesus in his people. There's something about Jesus in you that I don't have. That's why I want to spend time with you. That's why we got to spend time with each other. And just doing it at the church building, that's not enough. We got to get into each other's homes, share each other's hearts. Each one of us got something of Jesus that we might not have. Prove your wisdom by seeking Him. Secondly, allow God to take His time. You might be sitting and saying, well, I'm waiting for Him to answer my prayer regarding a new car, new husband. Maybe you need some financial assistance. Maybe you've got a trial in your life that just doesn't want to go away. Maybe it's a health issue. I want to challenge you to allow God to take His time. Don't rush Him. Number one, you can't rush Him. Number two, if you rush Him and He does do it before He planned on doing it, if He was going to do something like that, you would not be better off but worse off, because He does things at exactly the right time. If you walk by faith, lean on prayer, then let God do what He needs to do. Trust Him. He is busy preparing the exact right context to bring birth to your needs at exactly the right time. And finally, happy birthday, Jesus. We believe you live. We don't know on which day you were born, but we thank God that you were born. Love you all. Cheers.